Good morning, and I do mean good morning, because we're going to make some soup today that takes all day to cook. This is a soup that is something that my grandmother taught me to make, a variation on her Italian vegetable soup. Here's what I'm going to use: beef shank, onion, we're going to use some garlic cloves, that gives it a nice tasty flavor. Celery, I'm going to use the whole stalk, including the leaves and the heart. We chop it up pretty fine. Cabbage is the secret ingredient. You don't even know that it's there, but we'll shred that up pretty little. Carrots, diced tomatoes, white Italian cannellini beans, fresh organic spinach, acini di pepe macaroni. Or if you have kids, you can get the ABCs. Those are always fun to put in there. Or any kind of pasta that is your favorite. You can put some rigatoni or some elbow macaroni. That works well too. I'm going to use vegetable broth, but you could use beef broth. Our herbs we'll add as a bouquet. In my soup, I use peppercorns, tarragon, thyme, oregano, basil, and bay leaf. So the beef shank is a pretty inexpensive cut of meat. Has a great big bone in the middle, so you need quite a few of them. I like my soup to be pretty hearty, so I'll use 3 or 4. And you just put them in the pot and cover it with cold water. So we're going to boil this, turned it up to high, and what's going to happen is the water's going to get really foamy. Not unlike the foam on your latte. But we want to get rid of all of that foam, because if you leave the foam, your broth gets really cloudy and it's not very nice to look at. We're going to scoop off all of that foam before we add any other ingredients to the soup. It's always handy to have extra helpers in the kitchen, because there's lots of chopping and peeling to do. I like to chop my pieces of vegetables into small pieces, because I like to have multiple items on the spoon, not just one big hunk of carrot or one big hunk of celery. I like the pieces fine. I'm using an 8 to 10 quart stock pot, and this meal will serve 8 people. Alright, so that's the end of the foam. We have nice clear broth, no foam. There are the carrots. This is one nice big yellow onion. You can use yellow onion, sweet onion. I'm not crazy about red onion in the soup. Easy way to open garlic. Just take the flat edge of your big knife and pound it. The skin just breaks right off. Just put the garlic in. This is a small head of cabbage. I'm going to put in the whole thing because this is a small one. So these are the sizes of the shreds, and then I just kind of cut them in half, and then in it goes. And they wilt down. You don't use the core. Out you go. Diced tomatoes. Tomatoes and the juice. We used the tomatoes and all of their juices, but I'm not going to use the liquid that the cannellini beans come in. I'm just going to use the beans themselves. So I'm using a slotted spoon. Yeah, that's good enough. Let's give that a stir. I'm going to make an herb bouquet. And I'm going to show you how to do it with cheesecloth, which is the old-fashioned way. but you can also use a tea ball. So what you have to use is cheesecloth used for straining. And we're going to layer a number of squares, then place the herbs that we want to use in the center. So I'm going to unfold it. The old days, of course, they would strain cheese through this, hence the name cheesecloth. All right, so we have our herbs of choice. Peppercorns. This is oregano. This is thyme. This is my fave. This is tarragon. Basil, of course, is a staple in any Italian kitchen. And the other thing I'm going to use is bay leaf. However, the bay leaf, it's going to fly free. I'm not going to put that in the herb bouquet. It's going to float in the soup itself. And that can be taken out all by itself at the end. Now, if you have butcher's string, you can tie it around nicely, or you can just tie a knot.
Tie it up like a diaper.
Tie it up like a diaper, and tie another knot. And let this float in your soup. And the liquid runs through it, and runs through it, and runs through it throughout the entire cooking time. And at the end, you take it out. Here is the herb bouquet ball. And here are your bay leaves. And we're going to drop these into the soup pot.
It's been about an hour. Let's take a look and see.
We've had it simmering for a little while. And we'll just keep it cooking all day till we think the meat is cooked long enough. So our soup has been cooking for about 4 or 5 hours, and the meat is nice and tender. The vegetables are nice and cooked, and the broth is rich. So we're going to now lower the heat, fish out all of the meat, and dice it up and get rid of the bones. So I have taken out of the soup all of the shanks. The meat has just fallen off the bone. Found all 4 bones. I found this bouquet of herbs and the 2
bay leaves.
Bay leaves, thank you. And now I'm just going to dice up the meat that just sort of falls apart. It's so tender and it's so good. Steve has already helped himself to some. We're going to cut this up and then put it back into the pot with the rest of the vegetables. And as you can see, there's little to no fat or anything. There's just a little bit of connective tendon there that we can just set off to the side.
So it's so tender, it takes a very little effort to shred.
It doesn't take any effort at all. Don't even need a sharp knife. I'm just sort of separating it rather than cutting it. Put this back into the pot, some of this that I've already shredded. And you notice in all of this, I've not seasoned it with any salt because salt changes as you heat it, and so I don't salt until the end of the cooking time. Also, if you add a noodle, that will soak up some of your salt tasting. I don't do any of my salting until the end of the cooking. Another thing about salt is celery has its own natural salt. You notice on the spice shelf in the store, you can buy celery salt. Celery is very high in natural salts. So sometimes you might find that you won't need to add that much salt of your own because the vegetables themselves will season it for you. So now that I've added the meat, if I was going to add a noodle, I would be cooking it separately after it's cooked in the vegetable or the beef broth. This would be the point where I would be adding the noodle. I've decided not to add the noodle this time just because we're watching our carbs now after a very elaborate Christmas feast this year. I'm going to add some salt. Not a lot, because you can always add more. You just can't take it away. And I'm going to put in about a teaspoon, a little less, scant teaspoon. And now I'm going to put in the baby spinach leaves. They just sort of wilt down. They don't need to cook. And they give the soup such a beautiful color. there we are. Italian vegetable soup.
Wait, but it has beef in it.
Right. So our soup is ready and we have invited company, and so I'm going to dish it out and we're going to eat and enjoy it. And I was right, the teaspoon of salt is all that was needed. The celery brought its own salt to the soup, and we didn't need any more salt than that. So a nice hearty bowl, and bon appetit.